Hi everyone. So I can see Nicole, Frankie, Alicia, Simona, sorry, and Shamini. Do you know what? I'm dyslexic and you're in good hands. So if I butchered your names, apologies. But if any of you are wanting to go on camera today, I highly encourage it because it's always nice to see your faces. Like Alicia, is that right? Yes. But it's completely optional. But what I would like to start off with is just in the chat, if you could just say where in the world are you today and why you wanted to attend. So today we're going to be looking at assistive technology with a focus on neurodiversity, so things like dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD. So if any of you have any of those, or maybe people you know or work with or children, it'd be really interesting to know. Okay, so we've got some from Dublin. Nice. Cork. I love Cork. You may have guessed I'm from the UK. I'm from sunny Southampton, so not too far away. Okay. Oh, nice. We've got, yeah, a lot of Dublin representation, which you would imagine. Oh, Christina. Great to have you. Oh, Australia here. Nice. There's always someone showing off to show as far as away you possibly can get from us. Blackburn. Nice, Mohammed. Do love a bit of Blackburn. Got some good friends there. And if any of you, are you attending just because you had some free time? Maybe, or are you neurodiverse? Or have you had support elsewhere? I am neurodiverse, if you couldn't guess. I have dyslexia, dyspraxia, and autism, so I've got the nice holy trinity, and the workplace can be a bit of a pain. So today I'm going to be looking at what do I personally use that helps me on a day-to-day basis to be the best I can possibly be. Alfie says, parent of child with some sensory issues, also coach clients with neurodiverse. Great to have you. And I'm going to share my screen now so we can get right to it, but feel free to interact as much as you're able to. I want to learn more about assistive technology. I have a speech impediment. I have dyslexia. Great stuff. Well, it is great for today. So just so you all know, I can see the chat, so feel free to message as we go along. But yeah, here's this lovely offer. Do take full advantage of it. So yeah, exceptional individuals. We are a employment support organisation who supports people who do not necessarily consider themselves to have a disability, but due to society and the way that the workplace is kind of constructed, it can definitely have its challenges attached. Nice. Dyslexia, dyspraxia, and stutter. Nice. And you'll notice I am one of you here today. So I will stutter from time to time. I will get my words kind of muddled up. But I can promise you, all the advice is stuff that I use day in and day out and has actually been very helpful. And I also do not get paid to recommend anything. So everything I'm recommending is, from the heart. Just a little bit more about EI. We're a neurodiverse team, so everyone in this background comes from a diverse background. We have every condition under the sun, which makes us a fun bunch to be with. But we also give support. So if any of you think, oh, I wouldn't mind a bit of support in the workplace, you can always get in touch with us afterwards. But to move on, I like to make these sessions as interactive as possible, forced fun. So if you're able to, and I highly encourage it, go on your mobile device or cellular device and just go to menti.com. If you go to menti.com and put that code at the top of the screen, you're able to interact with us. It is not essential, but it's more fun if you're able to. Ooh, here's a QR code. So if you're feeling fancy, you can do the QR code. Just take a picture, click on it. But what I will do is I'll put the instructions in the chat just in case when I go off the screen, if anyone joins later or if you get kicked off for whatever reason, or you decide it's fun and actually I do want to play along, you can. Because as someone who is neurodiverse, my attention span isn't up to scratch. So being able to find ways that are a bit more engaging definitely helps me, and maybe it will help you. So we've got some good personal experience here, which I like to see. So if you have been able to join on, I want you to smash that cat button. So in the top, on your phone screen, you'll have like a little cat icon. Just click that if you've been able to join. Okay, brilliant. I can see we've got 5 people already, which is amazing. Some of you may just want to like watch passively today, but for those of you who are able to input, I think we do benefit a lot because, yeah, I know a lot of assistive technology, but there may be some that you use I've never tried before, and it will allow me to go. So I'm going to go past this screen now, but remember you can join even once I've pushed past this. So my neurodiverse assistive technology. I will definitely tell you which ones are great for dyslexia today, which ones are great for like autism, dyspraxia, you know, all the others. But just so you know, I have dyslexia, dyspraxia and autism, and my assistive technology mainly refers to those, but it's not limited to those conditions or ways of thinking. So first of all, what tech do you use? If you've been able to log on to the app, please write down. If not, write in the chat. Even unmute yourself if you'd rather speak, but I would love to know what tech you use. Now, obviously you could say PlayStation. I'm kind of referring to assistive technology here. So we've got Grammarly, great stuff. I am an avid Grammarly user. So Grammarly, for those who do not know, is a really good spelling software which can help with grammar, punctuation, the flow. We've got deaf, implant, listening. See, I haven't tried those. I don't use any at the moment. And if any of you have tried assistive technology a few years back and thought it was kind of terrible, it probably was. It has come a long way though, and we're going to be looking at how it currently is today. Now, if you're here for your children, a lot of this stuff will definitely be very beneficial. But if you are here as a working adult, you might think, I don't really need this. I've done my whole career, fine. Of course, it's been difficult, but I found ways around it. But what I always say to people is, if we can make your life even like 1 or 10% easier, then you are going to see massive benefits. And there's also lots of like funds and grants available in order to get access to this stuff. So I am going to show you how much it costs, but just know that if it's out of your budget, you can actually get it for free depending on it, like the different grants and where you are in the world. Tech would read my computer out loud, not sure if you'd call it that. Yeah, absolutely. Speech Central, nice. So the first one I'm going to talk about is reading. So software that is able, you speak into it and it writes it out. There's a lot to choose from here, but I rely so heavily on it. So all I want to know is, have you used any of these before? Have you ever used some software called Dragon, which is like the industry standard? Or maybe you just use things like Google or Siri or Alexa to speak into. Maybe you've got the automated system on your computer, or none. Okay, nice mix. So interestingly, we've got no one who's used Dragon here. Now, what I love about speech to text software, again, it isn't for someone who isn't able to write. Most people with dyslexia can absolutely read. They can write. They can do everything anyone else can do. But it might take a little bit extra processing, or it might be a little bit added of a challenge. So what this software does, it doesn't take away the challenge, but it eases part of the burden, or the things which kind of are blocks. So I will write all my emails with my voice. Hello. And then I'll speak really, really British for some reason because I think it understands me better. But actually, they are pretty good at understanding accents now, though they haven't always been. And it allows me to write a lot more fluid, a lot more natural, and it allows me to write using all the vocabulary I have in this brain. Speech-wise, I probably speak fairly well, but if you were to see my writing, it's just not very good. So this just allows me to express myself in a way which complements my intelligence and who I am, but it doesn't mean that I can't do it otherwise. What a bit about using the type right? Sorry, I'm not sure what you meant by that. If you could try and retype that. So just to give you a quick overview, Dragon is the industry standard. Really good piece of software. Didn't used to be good. So if you tried it before and it wasn't good, worth trying again. Google, Siri, all those might not seem like the type of software, but I use it religiously. So I download an app on my phone called Google Keyboard or Gboard, and every time there's the odd word that I'm not sure how to write, I'll speak to my phone and it will write it out. The voice on Mac and PC isn't great. It's there if you've got a good computer, but definitely worth trying out if you've not used it before. So just to summarize, the little like Siri's, Google, Alexas are great for the odd word, but if you're writing a whole sentence or paragraph, then I would recommend Dragon. Oh, I believe they're talking about Lightwrite, an app for taking notes and writing. Yeah, there's lots of them, and I think it's about finding the right one for you. To give you an overview of Dragon, Dragon is the text-to-speech software that will convert the user's spoken word into digital text. So it's about €415, which isn't cheap, but if it's something you use every day, it's really, really great. It allows you to be far faster in typing. You can control your computer with your voice. You can also record on a dictaphone and then upload it to it, and it will automatically convert it into text, which is really great for meetings. But with all things, does Dragon have a free version, Mohammed? I do not think so. It's definitely worth trying out. They didn't previously. You've got Dragon on the computer, but you can also have something called Dragon Go, which is like an app on the phone, which is a subscription base. If you can get a test version, it's definitely worthwhile, because for some people, Dragon is a lifesaver. It saves them hours of time. For other people, though, it does not work. And I would love to know, for any of you with a lovely Irish accent, or it is to me anyway, does it work for you? Because I have people who have like strong Indian accents, for example, and it just doesn't work. Australian, it seems to get really well. So it's definitely worth knowing. I know some of you mentioned you have speech impediments, and for you, this might not work as good as you would have hoped. I can't say for certain, but what I do like about Dragon is it's software that you can train. So you teach it, like I say words like don't and do, like really like an old farmer, and it always writes them out wrong. So I've trained it to know when I say don't, I actually mean don't. They usually don't pronounce R, so I imagine it might get confused at time. Yeah, and like I was saying, you can train it, but don't expect it to work out of the box. So the pros is it's pretty accurate. Like when you get it trained, it's right. I don't have to correct it that much, and it's quite good for doing full stop, punctuations. It's good for controlling your computer. So for instance, I could just be completely hands-free and say, open Word, or open this document, and it will do all the magic for me. But that does require a little bit more training. Transcriptions. Maybe you've been in a meeting and you've been asked to record notes. That can be really time consuming to like listen and then write it out. Let's just be honest, that's not the most dyslexic friendly in the world. So what you can do is record it on your phone or dictaphone, run it through the software, and then it will transcribe it for you. Something that used to cost a lot. You can also edit text. So you can do something like scratch that, go back and edit, and anything you can do with a mouse or a keyboard, you can do with your voice. By the end of the day, though, my voice is a little bit sore. So those are the pros. But the cons, and I said I'm going to be completely non-biased here, are real. So first of all, you need privacy. If any of you are in an open-planned office, Dragon's not great. Because I'll be honest with you, I get very self-conscious. I get a little bit like, I don't feel comfortable doing it in public. because everyone's listening into what you're talking, and for some reason everyone has some comment to say afterwards, like, oh, you really should be talking to that person, or what you're doing, and I'm like, this isn't a public conversation. So you will want somewhere quiet, and that's why it's better for laptops, because on a computer you can't really move it around. Unfortunately, if any of you love the old Macintoshes, they do not update Macs anymore. You can get an old version, but no new versions. Boo. I use mine on PC now, obviously, but I do have an old version on my Mac. Mac does have its own like inbuilt version, but it just isn't as good yet. So you will want to look for alternatives if you are a Mac user. Okay, we've got, what about free text-to-speech software? Are there anywhere where we write the text down as it comes out in script and then speech? Or am I just dreaming? No, there is free versions, but out of all the software I'm going to mention today, I will mention free versions. This is probably the one that you'd least want to get free, because you really do get what you pay for. But things like Google Assistant is good. You can also use things like Google Translate, or Office 360 has a version where you can like dictate. More and more softwares are able to do that now. It just depends. If this is going to be your bread and butter, then you'll want dedicated software. If it's something you only do for the odd word or the odd sentence, if you have no idea how to spell it, then the free stuff is completely fine. Requires training. A lot of the free stuff and things like Siri or Alexa, or I say it quietly because I don't want to trigger your devices. The reason why they're good is that they work straight out of the box. There's also software called Otter, which is really good for transcription, but Dragon does require training. It doesn't take a lot, maybe like half an hour, but the more you talk, the more it gets used to your voice, so it gets more and more accurate. The other downside is it's not great for multiple people. So maybe you're recording 2 people talking and you want it to transcribe, not going to be great. It's only great for your voice, because your voice is the one that has been trained. Next, we're moving on to advanced spelling software. This one's called Global Autocorrect, and I would be surprised if any of you have heard of this. This is one of those hidden gems, and it's about €415. And what this does is automatically does spelling correction. And you might ask, well, Nat, how is this any different from the spelling correction on Word or Grammarly? Well, those softwares are great, but what they do is quite demotivating. Every time you get something wrong, it does a red line under it. Did you mean? Yeah, I did. And then click it. Or Grammarly will says, oh, here's a recommendation. Really good if you're actively trying to improve your writing and learn as you go. But if you have been, you've been around the block, you're not getting any younger, and your brain is severely dyslexic, and that's just how it is, you do not want to be continuously reminded that you've got things wrong and continuously told to change it, because it's time consuming. So what Global Autocorrect does is it intelligently corrects your spelling. So while you're typing, it will correct it and it will change it automatically. So say you spell because wrong, it won't even let you, it will just change it. And that saves so much time. So I can go like really fast on the keyboard, and I have to make far, far less corrections than I would had otherwise. So definitely a good piece of kit. It's on PC and Mac, but I have found it works better on PC, like most things, because I think the Mac version is still a little bit buggy, but I imagine they are going to improve it. So here's just a quick idea which will show you what it gets up to. So as you can see here, normally you have words that have like red underline, and to correct it, you'd have to right click and then pick the correct button. Fine for most people who get the odd thing wrong here and there, but if you, for instance, spell entrepreneur wrong all the time, no matter how many times you like get it wrong, you still spell it wrong, that's just wasting your time correcting it. So what Global Autocorrect does is change it as you're writing. So this is one of the softwares which I think is really perfect for adults. If you're getting it for your child, I don't think this is good, because it's not going to teach you to learn to spell the word. It's good for someone whose brain will just always get it wrong. A great example is I work at a company, Exceptional Individuals. I worked at here for like 4 years now. I have to write individuals every single day, yet I still get it wrong because the way my brain processes written language. And global autocorrect will automatically change it, and that saves me so much time. So hopefully that makes sense. Give me a heart if that makes sense. Yep, there we are. I need some of those endorphins. Or dopamine, it's one of the two. So the pros of this is autocorrect by the very nature. It saves time. If you want to be productive, it's worth it. It has a large word library, so it knows a lot of words. And if you can see here, what's really good is it tells you how frequently you get a word wrong. So if you do want to like better yourself and try to improve it, you can easily see a breakdown of the words that you typically get confused with. It does work on PC and Mac. Ooh, it does. And you can upload your own words. So if you've got one of those unique spellings and it's always changing it to something that isn't correct, you can change it. The cons though, and the cons are always real, you can't correct words that are too similar. So I don't know, like if you did like cat or cot and like the two words are very similar, but you got the wrong one, it's not going to be able to correct it because the word you wrote is technically correct. So yeah, I would be lost without autocorrect. Yeah, it is a game changer. But the only thing, there's no grammar corrections on this, which is definitely worth knowing. It will do your spelling as you write, but it isn't going to do grammar. So Grammarly isn't out of a job just yet. It doesn't underline or highlight the correct words. So if you're someone who is, a bit of a control freak and you like to know exactly what has been changed, this isn't for you. This is someone who is ready to trust the AI gods and just let it do its thing. It can be resource intensive. So if you've got an old computer that's ratting along on like Windows 98, this isn't the thing for you. Because remember, it's continuously running. It's always in the background running. Every time you write, it's always processing to understand your writing. So it isn't great for slower computers. Now, here is some free spelling alternatives. Just curious to know, have you used any of them? Have you used the classic Grammarly? Have you used Microsoft Spell Checker? I'd imagine so. Or have you used smartphone voice assistants for like speaking to the phone to find out the correct spelling? Okay, well, like Microsoft is okay. I do find it's not. They haven't actually invested into it that much, so it's not that comprehensive. A lot of the time, it will not underline words which I know are spelt wrong. Grammarly, I have the paid version, and I personally find it's worth it. But the free version is completely, it does the job. It's not going to do tone or structure, but it will catch all your like basic punctuations. Okay, moving sharply on so we get through some good ones today. Claro Read. So Claro Read is a text-to-speech conversion software, and it will read your text out loud. Now here I put it's about 70 to 235 euros. That might seem like quite a wide gap, and that's because you can get like standard version, ultra version, super edition, so just know that they have different level of functions. Ooh, Motoger 8 Powerlight has said, do you use all of these technologies or just one? I use all of them. And the reason I use all of them is these aren't a miracle solution, okay? These will help. I use it like a cocktail. So, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. My general process is I will use speech software to speak to my computer. It will write it out. Then I'll put it in Grammarly, which will fix up the grammar and the spelling. And then I will use something like Claro to read it back to me to help with my comprehension. So I'm not saying you have to get all of them because, that like adds up dramatically. But it's about finding what works for you. For me to navigate the world efficiently and to be competent in my role, I do require a little bit of all of them. They all do way more things than I'm mentioning, but you'll probably only use like 10% of the overall features. So Claro Read is a text-to-speech, and there are loads of alternatives, but this is the most common one that works across PC and Mac. And this, all it does is you highlight the text and it reads it back to you. Why would you need this? Because you can read? Well, it's not really made for someone who cannot read. It's more about someone who might struggle with comprehension. So if you give me the odd sentence, I can read it. But if you give me a whole long email, I do find that a little bit overwhelming, or when I have to read contracts or do negotiation. So being able to have something to play back in my ear really helps. The voices used to be absolutely terrible. They all sounded like Stephen Hawkins, but now they are a lot better. My favourite one is one called Fiona. She's a Scottish voice, sounds lovely, but you really find the one that works for you. So I don't think a minute. So as you can see here, the text, it's just a little pop-up bar that goes up here. You highlight it and it will read it back to you. You can change the voices, you can change the speed. It's great. If any of you are using Mac though, Mac actually has a really good one already pre-built, and you can change your keyboard shortcuts. So I actually personally only use Claro if I'm using the PC, because I think Windows one isn't as good. So it's definitely worth knowing. Here is some speech alternatives. So just select the ones if you've used them. Google Translate, which I will explain in a minute. The inbuilt speech to text on Mac or PC, or naturalreader.com, or maybe leave some others or none. And this is always such a great way. Like, the way that dyslexic brains work is that they're actually really good. They're able to skip words. If something isn't quite correct, the brain just forgets it and carries on because it finds it more efficient. But so I might have made a few mistakes, and reading it, I see no mistakes. But if you listen back to it, it's an alternative way of digesting that information, and you can normally find out if you did something a little bit wrong. What is the use of having text-to-speech? Well, again, it is mainly comprehensive, to just have better understanding and to kind of really find those mistakes that are like lurking around. Because none of this stuff's perfect. Like, if you relied purely on Grammarly, you're still going to have mistakes. Google Translate might seem a bit of an odd one, but the reason why I use that as an alternative, because if you want a really, really quick version, what I do is I go on to Translate, I'll put words in English, and I'll translate it to English, and then you push the button and it will read it back to you. It's a little bit of a shortcut if you just want a really quick thing for maybe the odd word that you're unable to read. Another really good free one is Natural Reader, that you can just go on your browser and do it online. It does have a limit of how many words you can do a day, but it really depends how much of a power user you're going to be. Okay, hopefully you're still with me, because hopefully even if one of these bits of software helps you, then it could save you hours and hours of time. Next one is mind mapping software. This is one that I do not use on a daily basis. I use every now and then. I think if mind maps work for you, this is going to be great. If mind maps aren't your thing, this probably isn't going to convince you. So this isn't your everyday mind mapping. This is like advanced, and it's really good for planning, project tools, management. It has like different kind of like like different charts. It's about €330. These are adding up, and I can surely appreciate this isn't for everyone, but if one of these will save you time, it might actually be a worthwhile investment, or you may be able to get your employer to pay for it under like the Equality Act or reasonable adjustments. Or let's say, I don't know about Ireland as a particular example, but in the UK we have a scheme called Access to Work, where they can actually pay for a lot of these things on the government. So it'd be interesting to know if you have a similar scheme. What makes this software pretty interesting is that a lot of the time with dyslexics and other neurodivergence, everything takes way longer. So you'd have to like create it in a way that works for your brain, then convert it into a way that works for everyone else's brain. And that extra step adds up in time. But on this, it integrates so perfectly with Microsoft Office. So with a click of a button, it can turn your mind map into a PowerPoint, a Word document, an Excel document. It integrates really well with exports. So the key pros of this is it's really user friendly. If you've ever used Microsoft Office, using this is not going to be any trouble whatsoever. It's really, really clear and you can get your thoughts out so smoothly. Many views and conversion options, so you never have to make something twice. Quite often I'll get my bullet points out and then I can convert it into a whole host of formats. It's also really good for planning. So if any of you like data management and like tick off lists, I use it for that. The reason I suppose I do not use it is mine like bullet points work just as well for me, so I think it is individual. The cons though is it does take practice. If if it takes you a long time to learn new softwares, this will take you a long time to master. Not a long time to use though. It's one of those softwares that has way too many features, more than you'll probably ever use. Okay, Christina says there is a workplace equipment adaptation grant for assistive technology in Ireland. That is really good to know, thanks. So you actually may be able to get some of these. This is another resource intensive app, so you need a good computer. It has less features on Mac, and this may not be an issue for you because I actually use it on Mac and it works perfectly fine, but the PC version is the same cost and actually has more features on it. So have you used any mind mapping software? There's a really good one by Google called Coggle, completely free, very user friendly and very visually cool. The downside is very, very basic. PowerPoint, it's not a dedicated software for it, but can absolutely do it. Or maybe you just use the old pen and paper. That's completely fine either. It's not for everyone. The reason why I guess I use a lot of digital things is I lose everything. My dyspraxia means my memory can get very foggy and I lose things. So it'd be interesting to know. If any of you have any other tips or tricks you want to share in the chat, please do, because I'm always up for learning new pieces of tech and equipment. Okay, fingers crossed you haven't heard of some of these, because that's a goal, that maybe just one could be a game changer. Next one is a Cpen, and this may not be the most relevant for you. This is one. And this is a handheld device that can read out lines of text from print out loud. And this is about €235. So you remember how I showed you the software which you can select the text and it reads out to you? This is for physical stuff. So maybe you've actually got a physical book, a physical document, and you can just highlight over it, glide across, and it will read it back to you. Why would this be useful? For a number of reasons. Maybe you're someone who does, you do not do technology. You're a very hands-on person. You work in a very physical trade. So this is a device you can carry in your pocket. It's very sturdy. And you can just scan it and it reads it back to you. Another example is maybe you're in a work environment where you aren't allowed to use your phones. So you could absolutely get your phone out your pocket, take a picture, and it could read it back to you, but that might not look that professional. So this is a good alternative. You can also get a version which is completely safe for exams and for like banks where they require extra protection. So yeah, it's approved for those sorts of scenarios. You just plug your headphones in and you listen back to it. There are other versions which are arguably better, but this is the most affordable one, and it's really useful for those who may not rely on computers day to day, but still could benefit from having words read back to them. With most things, is it for someone who cannot read at all? Probably not. But is it for someone who gets the odd word, confused, or might not be able to understand it? Absolutely. Like, we support lawyers and doctors, and even members of parliament who use this, not because they can't read, but maybe if you get just one word wrong, if you're like a lawyer or a doctor, there could be massive consequences. So you definitely want to make sure that no words are slipping through the net. And these are just some examples. Like, there are other companies that all deliver it. These are just the ones that I use on a day-to-day basis that I can actually vouch for. So you can see, little device, it fits in your pocket, it's very subtle, and a lot of the time I have it on me just to feel confident that if a word comes up that I can't read, I know that I have it there. Do I always need to use it? No, but it does kind of fill me with a little bit more confident. And like I said, it can be used in a school setting and in exam setting, no trouble. You can like French and Spanish and all those things. Once though, I accidentally had it set to Spanish by mistake, and I could not figure out how to change it back. It was a right disaster. So the pros is vocal output, so it will speak to you back. A little bit robotic, but it more than does the job for what you need it for. It has a headphone jack. Yay! This isn't an Apple product. They still allow you to plug your headphones in. It doesn't, though, have Bluetooth, where some of the newer ones do, but you are paying for the privilege of it. So just be prepared at the moment, depending what you mainly use. Very portable, easy to have in your handbag. It looks like some sort of like thermometer. No computer skills are needed. This is one of the few assistive technologies where you can literally have no technology skills whatsoever. You can just turn it on and it will work out of the box. So really useful for those who cannot do computers for the life of you. The cons though, and again, you know, I'm not here to sell you any stuff, so this is why it's important to do the cons, is it can be difficult with glossy print. If you're working with a lot of magazines and things that are very shiny, this isn't going to get it great. I once scanned it over some like glossy text which was about like learning conditions, and it for some reason it said, "I have a gun." I was like, whoa, I did not put that. So be mindful that it will only typically work for your standard text. It can't be bigger than your, you know, normal size 12 to 15. Christina says, I also use Google's online dictionary as it reads out a word to me. Might not be as handy as having a pen. I think it just depends on your situation. So if it's for the odd word, then Google's completely fine. But if it's something that you feel you might use on a more day-to-day basis, an example of how this helps, like my mum, for example, she has one, is she's severely dyslexic, and she's, bless her, she's trying to read the Bible, like learning her way, and the words are really difficult. So she'll glide over it, and it'll read them to her, and she doesn't feel like she's missing out on context. Or I used it when I was reading Harry Potter. Like every time I'd get to a word like McGonagall, I like, and then it would help me just to keep the story flowing. Spines of books can be hard, so if you've got words that are like right to the edge of the book, it can struggle with those. And the only other thing, it has limited uses, so it does what it says it does, but it won't do much more. And you might want to ask yourself, is this a good investment? So a tablet, for example, might not be as good as this pen for reading, but the fact it can read and do a million other things might be a better investment. Now, other softwares you can use that are completely free are OCR, which is like, I think, optical character recognition alternatives. And these can be ones that are free. So these, very, very similar concept. It's just you take a picture of the text and it will read it back to you. So there's Google Keep, there's one called Text Scanner OCR, and one called Text Fairy. These are pretty good. Google's pretty good. The main disadvantage of these, though, is that it's not always very professional to get your phone out in certain situations. But if you're using it for home use, then these are perfectly fine alternatives. Okay, thumbs up if you're still with me and you're finding it useful. Thumbs down, no one. Yay! Okay. So this one is called, well, a digital pen, And the main one on the market at the moment is one called LiveScribe, though there are alternatives like Moleskin and similar ones like something called Remarkable. What they do is they're a hybrid between an analog and a digital pen. And that's about €119, which when I tell you what it does, I actually think is quite good value. So, say you have dyspraxia, right? Or you're just typically quite a forgetful person. You're in a meeting, you're writing your notes, and then you get on your train, you're going back to the office, and then someone says, "Where's your notes?" Oh, you've lost them. You've left them on the train, and that can be game over. It makes you look unprofessional, not very effective at your role. But why this is great is it will automatically transfer those written notes onto your phone, so you've always got a backup. And I love that because it just means that it takes that anxiety away. Like when are you doing like, okay, wallet, phones, glasses, finally Notepad is something which you don't have to worry about because you've got a backup. It's also really good if you find digital things easier, but in meetings it's not always appropriate and you want to have something which is physical. So yeah, as you can see here, you draw here or write here and it sends it to the tablet. It can also, if you write on it, it can convert that in digital text and then you can copy and paste it into emails on your phone. That, it's a little bit dodgy. The main thing I'd say is it's good for transferring, perfect for someone with dyspraxia. If you have really bad handwriting though, it may struggle to read it, but it depends on what you want to use it for. Okay, yeah, we've got a little video here which can give you a quick idea. But a lot of people, we recommend these two. And okay, say it works on Android and Apple. You can see here, it's a real notepad. And the way it works is there's a little laser in that pen and lots of dots on the page, so it knows what you're writing. It only works with their notepads. But as you can see here, you can swipe it and it turns it into digital text. This is really useful if your job is to take minutes in meetings, and trying to convert whatever you wrote to digital text is very time consuming. This can remarkably speed up the process. Oh, love this. I have a habit of losing my notes too. Yeah, this is great for that. Ironically, once I got it, I stopped losing my notes, but I guess that's because I became less anxious that if I lost it, it would be doom. So this was quite good for that. Oh yes, and another really good thing, and this is kind of like a spy software, it's also a dictaphone, so it can also record audio. A lot of the time, dyslexics are giving dictaphones, and dictaphones are great and everything, but let's be honest, who actually listens to them back? No one. So this is great, is while you're writing, you can get record, and whatever audio is happening around you, it will link to the text, so really easy to find. You've got to be careful though, because it looks like you're recording in secret. So pros, it's a comfortable pen, no issues with that. It converts written words and text quite well. Surprisingly, you do not need to have amazing handwriting. It gets my handwriting. It has edit features, so if it gets anything wrong, you can always edit on your phone, though realistically, you're probably not going to bother with that. The cons, ongoing expense, you still have to buy ink and paper. It's not a great expense, and you can even print the paper out because they have like tiny little dots on, which helps with the tracking, but just know it's not a one-off payment. You do have to continue. You cannot do colours with this one, but if you want colour, then Moleskin, which is an alternative, does have colour, but is more expensive. Sometimes there can be pairing issues. So if you have an unofficial phone or a phone that has an older version of Bluetooth, it may not pair up so well. Okay, but have any of you used any other smart pen alternatives? So like I said, you've got your Moleskin ones, you've got one which is done by Wacom, which also does tablets. You've got a tablet called Remarkable, which is like a e-reader, but it feels like you're writing on paper. Or maybe you've not used any, which looks like the majority of you. If any of you, I don't know if any of you have like a moleskin shop around you, you can actually walk into their stores. They sell mostly pens and stationery, and ask to have a go on one. With these things, I highly recommend you try them first if you're able to, before just splashing out and buying one, because they're not for everyone. Some people use them religiously, others try it and never really keep it up. Another top tip is great that if you lose your book, it's got a backup. That's amazing. But if you lose your pen, then you've got trouble. So it depends. If you're like semi forgetful, really useful. If you're really forgetful and you're likely to lose a pen, that's a very expensive loss. Nicole says, didn't know they were a thing. Yeah, no, they are. And again, with technology, we're not at a stage where it's completely perfect, but we're definitely at a stage where it is usable to the point where it can help you with your day-to-day life. I like my notebook is now in the office in London, and I'm in Southampton, and I still have all my notes with me on my phone, and it does it automatically. So it's one thing I have to worry about. Dictaphone, as I've mentioned, it's your standard thing that you go into university and you tell them dyslexic, they give you a dictaphone. They are definitely useful, but they're only useful if you use them. The prices can vary dramatically, and honestly, an £18 one does the job. You don't really need an expensive one if you're just using it for note taking. But if you want to, say, run it through something like Otter or Dragon, which then dictates it, you are going to want one that records in a good quality. Otherwise, the transcription isn't going to be as good. So just kind of keep that in mind. You do not have to spend big money, but if you go for the complete cheapest one, you might have some challenges. So the quick pros of a dictaphone is it does complete data capture. So unlike writing notes where you only catch the top level, this is going to record everything. It's extremely portable, so it's not going to cause any hassle. You probably even have one on your phone. It doesn't have to be a dictaphone. The only thing with a dictaphone is it's less sad if you lose it. If you lose a phone, you lose everything. You can review meetings very easily. Does note taking, but the cons is that recording isn't always appropriate. If you go to a meeting and you say, do you mind if I use a dictaphone? They may very well say no. Or if they do say yes, they might filter what they're saying and they might not be as fluent. So as someone who does a lot of sales, I stopped using the dictaphone because I felt people weren't as frank with me. And that's when I used my Live Scribe pen, because it did have a dictaphone on it. But you've got to tell them. Ethically, you have to tell them that you're recording audio. Another thing is, do you actually ever play it back? Maybe not, but that doesn't always have to be a negative. For me, just knowing that I have a backup, should I forget or should I have a bad day, then I have that added backup. Moto says, why are dictaphones useful for dyslexics? You mentioned at uni they may give you one. Well, they're useful dyslexics because people with dyslexia and dyspraxia can struggle with memory retention. So if, say, someone is talking at you for like an hour straight and they've got a really boring monotonous voice, and you struggle with note taking at the same time, you're probably not going to leave with much retained knowledge. But if you've got another way to listen back to it in your own time, no matter how many times your brain kind of glitches or kind of skims over what's being said, you can play it back continuously. So in theory, dictaphones are really useful for those with dyslexia. I think in practice, though, a lot of people do not actually use them in the way that they're intended. So just bear in mind, if you're the type of person who's going to use it, definitely worth it. But if you know yourself, if you know you're probably not going to listen back to it, maybe not. The other thing is human error. You might think you're better than this, but trust me, it happens to everyone. You think you pushed the record button, and you didn't. And, it's like, oh no, I wasn't remembering anything, and now you've forgotten it. So out of these assistive technologies, I'd love to know, what ones do you think you would get the most out of? And here, all you need to do is rate the ones and move them around. So for instance, if you think the spell check would be the most useful, you put it to a number 1. So we've got mind mapping, reading pens, spell checkers, text to speech, or speech to text. Because some of these may not be helpful at all. Okay, so we've got spell checkers, nice. Okay, now this is interesting. So most people have said the text-to-speech software would be most useful. And I do think that does help with, like, if I listen to someone else speak something back, I normally catch most of my mistakes. Speech to text is so good. That's probably my favourite bit of software, but it's only useful to me when I'm working at home or if I'm in a private office. Not so useful in a big space. Spell checker, I couldn't live without it personally. Reading pen, mind mapping, yeah, you know, weirdly enough, these are actually probably the order that I would put them in as well. Now, if you have used them before, how would you rate them? And this is just to get, you only do this if you've done it before, by the way. But it'd be good to get some of your opinions, so you're not just getting my viewpoint. So if any of you have used Dragon before, Autocorrect, Global, MindView, Cpen, though I do appreciate a lot of you hadn't used some of these before, so we'll just stick to Dictaphone. So, to be fair, that's mid of the range. Mildly useful, mildly not. So as a lot of you haven't used these, try and find free versions if you're able to begin with, or see if another establishment might have versions you can use. I know we're a little bit far away, but we normally let people try things out before they choose to get it, or make sure there's a good return policy, because you want to make sure it's actually going to be beneficial. Unless you're using it through your government scheme, in that case it's a lot more streamlined. So some honourable mentions just as I wrap up. Coloured overlays. Why do dyslexic people use coloured overlays? No one ever understands. Well, it's because of the way that our brains process contrast. So white and black is the most difficult contrast of them all. It's actually really straining for our eyes. So by changing the colour, it reduces the contrast and it can lower visual stress. It's why some people might have tinted glasses. But if you've only ever used the colour yellow and it doesn't work, you haven't really tried them properly, because all our eyes have different frequencies of the colours that we find stressful. So you want to try all the colours and find out the right shade for you. So we've got the speech to text software I think would be helpful for my son during exams this year and finds handwriting really tiresome. It should save him a lot of time to verbalise his ideas first. And I think that's a good point. It all depends on what they're testing. If they're testing on the actual writing, they might not allow it. But if they're testing on the content, then normally they can be quite okay with it. Noise cancelling headphones. If you have autism or struggle with concentration, they can be so great. It can just block out the rest of the world. Music. I know this might not seem like assistive technology, but Spotify has saved me. Being able to just concentrate in a way that my brain finds engaging has saved so much time and has been definitely worth the investment of about €10 a month. A daylight lamp. Those are lamps which kind of they replicate the natural sun, and that's because you can get quite depressed if you're in an office all day with artificial lighting, so these can really boost mood. And people with neurodiversity do have higher likelihood of struggling with depression for a number of reasons, so that is something to consider. Calendars. It's a very basic one, but calendars are so helpful. And if you go for a digital calendar, you can set multiple reminders so you never miss an event again. I'd be lost without my calendar. Alarms, reminders, to-do list. I know they're basic, so I didn't focus on them, but they're an essential part of any neurodiverse toolkit. So as I'm finishing up, is there any that I've missed? Any that you use that you think, what about that one? I think maybe that could help any other people. You might not have any, but if you do, I'm always keen to learn so I can keep sharing them with other people and test them out. Nicole says, I am a manager, so this has been incredibly helpful to know how I can support my team. Yes, Nicole, glad you could attend. Just knowing what's available is great, because people might come up to you and say, I'm struggling with something, and they might have something, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily the expert. So having that greater level of understanding could be really useful. Ooh. Okay, now as we've gone there, let's finish up with any questions. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And we got, wasn't aware of most of those technologies, so really helpful. I'm really glad. I mean, that's the idea. I'm not telling you that these are the one solution to rule them all, but just knowing they're available can really take the edge off some of the extra struggles in life. Thank you, was late but enjoyed it. No worries, Denise, it has been recorded, so you can always come back and check more. And I'm going to finish off then, and you can always drop me an email if you have any additional questions that you didn't feel comfortable to ask now. I'm Nat, so you can just do Nat, N-A-T, at accept.co.uk or admin, and I'll do my best to get back with you with further information. We are based in the UK, but we can absolutely support people in Ireland, just in different ways depending on what schemes are available. So this is open to everyone.